Hey, it's Josh, and today we're going to talk about INEOS Grenadier maintenance. Not extra maintenance, but the basic maintenance, the ones that you do once a year, or if you're a heavy user, twice a year. So I'm just kind of hitting the 1 year mark with my Grenadier, and so I got my car into the dealer last week to have the annual service. And so today I'm going to talk about what I had done and what it cost me. And then also a little bit about how they've organized and a little more formalized the maintenance process. Because when I walked in, they had like a menu that showed me different maintenance intervals and what kind of work gets done in them. And it's kind of basic. The price isn't basic, but the work is kind of basic. So first I'm going to pop this on the screen, and it's basically an overview of the different service intervals at 12,000, 24,000, 36,000, 48,000, 60,000, 72,000, and 84,000, basically covering you years 1 through 7. And their assumption is that you come in once a year if you're a normal user that drives approximately 12,000 miles, and that you're coming in twice a year if you're doing a lot of heavy off-road or other extraneous things that put more work into, effort in the car. So, of course, I don't drive a lot. I barely hit 4,000 miles on my Grenadier. And that's exactly what I expected, because I have a car, I just don't drive it a lot. And that's kind of me. And it's funny, I love my Grenadier, but I try to find ways nowadays not to be in traffic, because that's where I spend most of my time. So anyway, the 12,000 mile interval basically calls for a lube, oil, and filter, tire rotation, cabin air filter, front and rear differential fluid exchange, and then this thing they call engine armor protection, which is an additive that reduces friction and heat-related wear, extending engine life. Sounds a little black magic, and I saw it on my invoice, and it wasn't that expensive, so it is what it is. 2 years, they go to lube, oil, filter, tire rotation, cabin air filter, and a brake fluid exchange. So instead of the differential fluid exchange, they do a brake fluid exchange. And then something called an express fuel service that increases operating efficiency and reduces emissions. Sounds a little marketing to me, but whatever. 36 years, lube, oil, filter, tire rotation, cabin air filter, and then a fuel induction service. Removes deposits, keeps injectors functioning, and an oil system cleaner. So it's all basic stuff. And so I'm going to say that your price is going to be relatively similar year on year. And it's not until you get 4 years in where they actually are changing spark plugs. And I don't know when the last time I've had a car that got new spark plugs has been, but the Grenadier gets new spark plugs at 4 years. And as the years go on, additional things get added. So they now have service mapped out that you can easily understand years 1 through 7. But then you go in, or I went in and, took in my paperwork. And of course I had a list of things that I wanted to address. The door button recall, the software update, which it's here, it's not here. I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. And then my side stepper was creaking, the HVAC. I'll go through my list really quickly, but basically on my work order, the 12,000 mile service is an oil and filter change, front and rear differential fluid change, tire rotation, cabin filter replacement, and added motor performance additive. Exactly what their little menu said. The pricing, the estimate came in at $1,240, and the total, for whatever reason, was $1,138. And I'm not sure why they slightly overestimated, because what they listed was what they charged, but they kind of added a little extra labor, I guess, as a buffer. And that's okay. But now in talking about the service price, which a little more than I expected. I mean, I'm used to spending about $1,000 a year. It seems like if you own a higher end car, you can't go in for service for less than $1,000 for an annual visit. And that's without any extras like brakes or things like that. So I've heard estimates from other people that are as low as $800 for that 12,000 mile service to as much as $1,600 for that same 12,000 mile service. Don't know what the dealers are doing differently, or if it's a pricing strategy, or if they're, changing up how they're adding things up. But basically, it's all the same prescribed maintenance, and that's kind of where you're going to get. It's about what you're looking at, $1,200. Now, there are a lot of people that are, talking about the workshop manuals and wanting to do the work themselves, and you can do that. I mean, our state has a right to repair law, and it's not that you can't perform your own maintenance, but in order to get those service intervals reset, dealers got to do that for you. You have to use prescribed oil, or you may void your warranty. So you have to be careful. If you're going to do your own service, you have to keep your receipts, and you have to use the lubricants that are specified by the manufacturer so that you don't risk voiding your warranty. So to me, that just sounds like more trouble than it's worth. To people that love to work on their cars, it's probably no big deal. They use a BMW specific oil called liquid moly or liqui moly. And so it's a 0W20 weight oil. And so it's very specced out exactly what there is to be used. And I would assume that if you wanted to change your own oil, you're going to go to a Grenadier dealer to get your parts, your filter. So I'm not sure how much money you're going to save by doing it yourself. Yes, you will, because the labor that they charge, a little excessive. But again, it's just sort of part of the thing. It's a once a year deal, and I didn't bat an eyelash. I've been doing this for too long, and so it's like, oh, okay, $1,200, great, I'm excited. But it is what it is. And if you're going to spend $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 on a Grenadier, then don't be surprised when it's $1,000, $1,200 to get it serviced. So let's go through exactly what else I had done, because some interesting things happened. Now, a couple of things that I liked, I didn't like, and one of them was for $1,200, I got my car back. It wasn't washed. And I used to take my car in dirty because dealers always wash your car before they give it back to you. And in California, it sort of became a practice to not wash cars. And they would always say, it's the drought. We're not, we can't wash cars. But you know what? I've never seen a new car go off a car lot that wasn't spick and span clean. So I don't know where the truth lies in that. But for $1,200, I would think that they could hose it off. Anyway, they also do not offer a loan car for a 12,000 mile service. It's supposed to be a 3-hour service. They request that you give them 6 hours to perform that service. And this is my dealer in particular. Your dealer may have a slightly different policy. But, that still makes me kind of wrinkle my forehead that if I bring a car in for service and I'm going to have to either sit and wait for it or find transportation to do something else. But I had some warranty work done, which actually tipped me over the amount of time that it was going to take, so they offered me a loan car. But let's go through some of the things that I brought in my Grenadier for. First one was power steering failure warning light that came on last week. Now, a lot of people talk about the high whiny noise of the power steering pump, and it's if you just sit with your windows down and you don't touch the steering wheel, you don't really hear it. And you pull to one side or you pull to the other side, you'll hear this noise. And once you identify it, you know exactly what it is. My service manager says it's just not insulated like some are in other cars, but they checked the fluid and they checked the functionality of the system, and it was operating fine. We think that maybe the warning light went off earlier last week because of the low battery situation that I've been dealing with, which we also addressed. So along with the 12,000 mile inspection, they also rotate your tires, and they do this thing called a multi-point inspection, which I don't know how quickly they do that or what it entails, but it's part of the service. So I had a door rattle on the driver's door, and they noticed that there was a door seal that was improperly installed. And so they took it off, cleaned it up, put in a new door seal. I still think the rattle's there, but we're going to address that upcoming. But they did something to it. Open recalls. There were two. There's the door button recall that we're familiar with, and they actually had the parts. And so they were able to change my door buttons. And if you're not aware of it, the door button recall actually requires changing the lock cylinders as well. So when you're done with this service or the recall, they give you 2 new keys for your car. So in case you had a Grenadier key loss, don't buy another key until you get this recall done, because they're going to give you 2 new keys. And no, you can't use your old key on this car. It's all coded in the chips and all that stuff. That's why they're bothering to give you a new key set instead of recoding the ones that you had. So that went smoothly and without hitch. I was really pleasantly surprised to know that they had the parts, because that recall letter basically said we don't have the parts. So check with your dealer and maybe tie it in with your annual service to get that done at the same time, because I know some of you drive a long way to go get your car serviced. So the next thing was the battery that I keep having go down below 60%, and it doesn't seem to charge up past 75%. Well, they threw a charge on the battery and they tested the battery, and then they did a reset of the head unit, and lo and behold, all of a sudden my battery's showing like 83%. So they're convinced that my battery is okay, and I'm okay with that my battery is okay as long as the battery is okay. So we put a pin in it and we keep our eye on it, because I'm going to be gone for a month upcoming and the car's going to sit, and that's where I get concerned, because I don't have the ability to plug in a battery tender where I live. So it's going to sit. So I'm getting ready for that. Next thing, my side stepper. I have side steppers. Some people have rock sliders. Those are the ones that are up close against the vehicle. The side steppers are the ones that you use to step up and into the vehicle. And mine were the INEOS ones. They weren't aftermarket. And the one on my driver's side developed this creak. So when you'd step on it, it'd go creak. And sometimes I'm recording a video and I step in my car and this big creak comes out and I have to edit it out. So anyway, they replaced it. They replaced the entire side stepper. So that was nice. I'm glad I, make a list of all these little things that you forget, because things bother you and then you kind of just push them to the back and then you don't remember them when it comes the time to talk to your dealer about it. So I make a list and I just keep that list handy. So next was HVAC whistle, and that it doesn't blow hot and cold so intelligently. And I learned 2 things. One, the way that on the head unit, when you turn the heat up and the cool down, towards the blue or towards the red, if you look at the very top of the display, the infotainment display, it shows a temperature that it's selecting. It actually goes up and down in a temperature. And what it's trying to do is hit that cabin temperature. It's not like I want more hot, I want more cold. It's like you're picking a temperature. And that's not necessarily always the intelligent way to do it, because we're so used to getting in a car and saying, I want more hot, I want more cold, and you're paying less attention to the temperature. But it's kind of a little loose in its interpretation of temperature. And so the service manager told me that they're working actually on a software update that's going to address this and make it smarter, so that it does a better job at giving you the hot when you're cold and giving you the cold when you're hot. Because I find that more times than not, I have to go all the way to cold and then kind of dial it back, or all the way to hot and then dial it back, because that kind of triggers it to get into that mode. And he explained to me that it's all handled through a single system. It's kind of like this little trapdoor that flips it to hot or flips it to cold, kind of like the heat pump sort of situation. And so just know that turning it all to one way and then backing it off a little bit is probably more likely going to get you that warm air when you need it, or vice versa, get that cool air when you want it. And so try that out. And I'm waiting to see what kind of a software update they actually come up with, because that sounded interesting. I didn't really realize that it thinks it's trying to maintain a temperature and it's surveying the temperature in the car, and it's just not doing such a great job at it. I also mentioned that the auto start stop, for me, it's a little laggy, and I've had some instances where I take my foot off the brake and I hit the gas, and it's like car turned off, and it's like it didn't start as fast as I was ready to go, and I don't care for that. So I normally turn it off, and it's easy to turn off with the little button. But they compared it, they just basically said we compared it to other cars. It's operating the way it's designed, and yes, they know that it kind of behaves that way. It's not the most intelligent auto start stop system. Then I also reported that I have an occasional head unit freeze, where sometimes my Apple CarPlay doesn't connect. Like I had an instance where I stopped at the side of the freeway to get a snack, and I got back in the car and the CarPlay wouldn't reconnect. And then all of a sudden the head unit kind of freaked out, and it started playing radio stations, and the buttons wouldn't respond. And I basically had to do the equivalent of a reboot, where you hold down a button and you hold another button and make it kind of power cycle. So they performed a software update. There was actually a technical service bulletin for it, and they ran that and then restarted it. And so I'm hoping that that's kind of taking care of it, because it's a very infrequent problem. It's happened a couple of times, but when it happens, you're like, what did I do? What's going on here? It doesn't make sense. So that is, the last thing that I put, and I had them document it because I know they don't have a fix yet, and that's the compass calibration. I live near the coast, and it says I'm 110 feet below sea level. And of course, we know that's not true, but that is a software issue that they're working on, and it's connected to the head unit. So that's something that we get to wait a little bit longer for. So that's the amount of work that I had done, and they got it done all in a day. I didn't take a loan car. Instead, I hung out at the dealership and asked a million questions, because that's the kind of guy that I am, and used it as an opportunity to learn stuff. So just know that if you're considering getting a Grenadier, or you have a Grenadier and you're not at the 1 year marker yet, that service is a little pricey, and don't be shocked. It sort of is what it is. I don't think for $1,200 I would go and do anything on my own. For people that do want to do things on their own, bless you. And, do what you want to do, and just keep your proof that you've done it. And then when you go to the dealer to have the things that you must have them do, because you can't get those service indicators reset unless you prove to them that you've performed the maintenance, and you'll probably pay them something to actually reset those indicators. So it's a disappointing, frustrating thing, and I know that there are people that are upset that that's kind of how they did it. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about just briefly was workshop manuals. I asked questions about these workshop manuals again, and the service managers told me, because I'm like, why don't they have workshop manuals? You have workshop manuals. And he said, yes, I do, obviously. But the workshop manuals that they have basically are A, computerized, and B, cover every VIN number in the system for every country and every different variation in build. So looking for a certain diagram requires knowledge of specific builds, left-hand drive, right-hand drive. It's all one big ball. And so some of it's proprietary, and so that's not something that they can just hand out to customers. So what he thinks they may be doing is kind of coming up with a dumbed-down version that's a little more generic that can be given to customers, because he says they're working on it, but it's one of those things that obviously they bit off more than they can chew, and they promised some things that they didn't really know what they were promising when they did it. And it's unfortunate that, people are disappointed. I'm not disappointed. I was never going to work on my own Grenadier, and most of you watching this weren't going to work on your own Grenadier. But yes, there are some of you that were. And you know, the dream and the original intention, as it was stated, was that this would be a car that you could work on yourself. And I think regulation, if anything, ruined that more than INEOS design bosses, because ABS is required, and then therefore you have sensors, and therefore you have computers that know that airbags are tied to braking and all those kinds of things. So even though the INEOS is much simpler than like a Land Rover Defender with 37 ECUs versus the Defender's 81, it's still got computers in it. And so that's not just something you can go and fix in a field, and probably need special diagnostic equipment in order to take care of it. So when you get your car serviced, just know that at least you're dealing with people that are trained exactly on your INEOS Grenadier, because that's where I feel most comfortable. I don't know that, you know, people still are just getting familiar with the Grenadier, and as simple as it may or may not be, because it's a BMW engine, it's a ZF transmission, and it's all those standardized parts, still the recipe and how it's all put together is uniquely INEOS. So I hope you learned a little bit of something about service and just are prepared for when your time comes. And I'm interested in your comments about what you paid, or if you got a loan car, if they washed your car, any of those kinds of things, because, you know, either we'll be envious or we'll be like, well, because I think that when they're offering a high-end service, they have to just throw in some of that stuff that makes you feel like you're that kind of customer. And, you know, the Grenadier's a truck and it's off-road and all those kinds of things, but it's still an $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 vehicle, because, and the prices are going up. I looked at some of the prices when I was there. So anyway, that's all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.